Welcome, everybody, to another comic book review, continuing on my Iron Man coverage. So, I figured this time around, and maybe in future stuff, when I do comic book reviews and I got other stuff to do on the same day, I should probably handle uh, the comics first, especially when I have my phone fully charged, so that way, because if I don't have a comic book on hand, I have my phone and I can just scroll through the stuff uh, uh, as I'm, like going through the stuff because it does drain the power, and I want to get this stuff like out the way, charge on phone while I cover like the other reviews. So that's just putting it all out there. And once again, before we get started, do me a huge favor if you like my reviews, whether it's comics, the TV shows, the movies, general topics, uh, or even my video game walkthroughs, please hit the like button, the notification bell, and of course, you can follow me in the links in the descriptions, where there's my Patreon, where you can watch my private videos that I can't share on YouTube, as well as follow different tier lists for different special requests. But also my Twitter at Talkative Carl, as well as if you want to join me on my live uh, walkthrough videos of different video games, follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Talkative Carl, and as well, of course, is my YouTube channel, like uh, the recent subscribers, like the Baron of Gaming and Jordy Animations. Uh, definitely give it like a nice little subscribe if you want to check out my plethora of videos that I'm putting out. Oh, by the way, I recently started a new series of videos. Well, not, it was going to be a series, but like my chaotic lore videos that I do every other week, uh, this one is not going to be as frequent, but I'm doing like a psychology on different anime characters. I just posted one up on Seto Kaiba from the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise, covering quite a few things uh, uh, about him. I'm not a doctor. I just want to do this for fun. I have like respect for psychology. I always find that interesting. Uh, kind of like a hobby in a way. It requires like some a decent amount of research depending on the topic. Going into a particular character, like Seto, for example, going into his like ego, family, dynamics, uh, relationship, issues, things like that. So yeah, it's posted on the channel. So if you're curious, and it's probably gonna be at least maybe like a month or two before I get into another character. But I'm trying to make sure that I got like uh, some space to do it in if I'm not bogged down with so much reviews or games that I have to cover. But anyway, I just thought I'd let you guys know that so you can check that out too if you're interested. Anyway, now back to this Iron Man Extremis. It's just like a 6-issue arc, uh, written by Warren Ellis, art by ID Grenouve, and I seen like a handful of ID's artworks in several other comics. It has I want to say hyper realistic. I don't know. I did a cover. One of my first earlier comic book reviews was on the Invisible Woman solo 5-6 issue uh, adventure, and I think it has like the same kind of art style. Not sure if it was ID specifically, but It's cool. I wouldn't put it as my favorite art style. I usually appreciate this kind of thing, but I think stuff like Jim Lee, I think put Jim Lee pretty high up. But as far as like comic book artists, uh, and then of course you got what's the name from Spawn, who made Spawn. I like that art pretty well, as far as like being like hyper realistic. I think these two do like a better job, uh, in my opinion. And there's like at least one or two other people that I can't think of, but I've seen some art styles that you know lean into trying to make it like a realistic people, and uh, the people I mentioned, Todd McFarlane, like the Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee is pretty high up for me as far as artists. Uh, but this is the introduction of the Extremis. Now, I remember reading this in college. It was in a library, and like I it was around the same time as I read like the Punisher uh, Max stuff that I just recently did like a review of, which you can check out on the channel. It was around the same time when I dove into this, and mind you, this is probably around the same time when the pretty sure in the same year as the first Iron Man movie came out. Now, Iron Man 3, as well as one of the episodes called Extremis in the second season of Iron Man Armored Adventures, which, by the way, I just recently did a review of, so you can check that out as well. But they covered the Extremis, and they obviously borrowed a lot of stuff from this comic, as well as Iron Man 3, which I will be covering in in a little while. But well, the movie, they brought in Audrey Killian and Maya Hansen, which are two scientists in this comic book. Although, slight spoiler for the movie, which you probably already would have seen by this point, they kind of sort of like in the movie, Aldrich Killian is like the main bad guy, but him here in the comic, he didn't play like he's not like an overarching villain here. He's not even supporting character. Uh, but Maya Hansen plays a significant role in this. And of course, this guy named Malin, who is like a big bad in this arc, played a bigger role in the episode in Armored Adventures, and they borrowed a lot of the fight scenes from this comic and implemented them into the episode. So Extremis, is playing a lot here. But yeah, Tony, like at this point in time, Tony is like a really like uh just I mean, he's having a hard time because this is still like uh I want to say like not too far away from like it's only like 7 years after 9/11, so like uh the thought of like terrorism was still permeating the zeitgeist of the American people. And here you get technically domestic terrorism, and then but at this stage in the game, people are already feeling like fatigued with like having troops dying in countries, and it was like like hitting people on the home front hard, where it's like, okay, we need to get our troops home kind of situation. All the while we're dealing with like pretty much like a domestic terrorist here, Malin, in this, because they didn't lean on that in the episode of Iron Man Armored Adventures. He's just like disgruntled Shield dropout who somehow stole an Extremis serum, injected himself with it, and went on like a rampage to take out his Fury on Fury and other Shield agents. But here, he's pretty much like a racist redneck who hate using this fucking term, but make America great again kind of mindset before it was a thing. And so they got a hold of the Extremis serum, which was like sold to them by the scientist, Killian. And now they're pretty much injecting Madeline with it, obviously for nefarious means to like enact whatever warped view of whatever political views that they have, which is, obviously not good. Tony at this point is like, can't even look himself in the mirror because, like, the weight of his past is pretty much because even though he's done what he could since becoming Iron Man, trying to eradicate, any weapon of his that's in the hands of anybody except for Shield, even though most other iterations, he doesn't want anybody to have any weapons of his, especially any kind of Stark tech specs for making any kind of Iron Man suit or whatever variation of it, like in Armor Wars, which I covered last week up on the channel. But I guess in this, as he mentioned to his board of directors, like Shield is different. It is an international peacekeeping, but international defense force, which was reading that, it's like, okay, like I don't fully disagree with him because even though like later on Shield gets infiltrated by Hydra and blah 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 blah, but it's just like Shield usually is defense against something that's like alien invasion, and you need like like Avengers and X-Men and Inhumans and all these supernatural or like super enhanced individuals will require like enhanced backup, especially like helping like bystanders and whatnot. So they need like something to defend themselves against something that's like more than your average cop can handle. But on the other hand, it's too easy for somebody to like in the episode of Armored Adventures, like Malin easily can snatch up some highly sensitive stuff, or like the Ghost, who can go into any facility, steal any secrets, and sell it to the highest bidder. And most iterations, Tony would not have anybody have any Stark specs or tech on them for somebody to easily infiltrate and take, because you can't foresee what happened, despite whatever argument you might have against Stark. Like, you have like supervillains who can like phase through walls. It's like, okay, you can't count on your word of it being super secure. You can't guarantee that. So like I said, all that stuff is like weighing heavy on Tony's mind. That like he can't even look himself in the mirror because like it's like he's still in the midst of people like kids in these overseas finding these like the landmines and like getting hurt and things like that. I'm not even sure if they found them, or because that's supposed to be like because they hammering those kind of things home in commercials and what have you, like trying to sniff out all these old landmines that haven't gone off, and like deactivating them or forcing them to blow up, so that way no kid can accidentally find it and kill themselves or hurt themselves. And so Tony at this point is being interviewed by this kind of those left wing uh, interviewers, kind of like what's his name with a hat, the heavyset guy with a hat. I'm blanking on his name. He's wearing glasses. Uh, but you know what I'm talking about. He's kind of like one of those guys who asks like the hard hitting questions that people want to know, no softball crap. Who weeks ago Tony arranged for this kind of interview, trying to I guess play it fair in a way, because he doesn't want any softball questions. He wants to answer questions that the people want to know, so he can reassure them, and because he doesn't want to give those people who would just give him softball questions. Like, no, I want to answer these kind of questions. However, this dude, because this, it'll be uh, a responsible reporter, someone like Oprah or Gail, uh, you know, uh, people like that who ask the right questions, but also, unlike this guy here who is just uh, just like talking over Tony, because he asked him a question, allowed Tony to answer, and he's just talking all over him. And Tony's like, all right, I'll let you say what you are, what you have to say, and but and when I'm trying to answer, you keep talking over me or cutting me off, like, and basically this like, and this is where I'm getting like confused, like, because like you said it here, like you knew who this guy was and what he's all about, and you hired him, and it's like, you ever did your research and watched any of his other stuff? Because apparently you did, and like you didn't set the ground rules about like, okay, don't talk over me. You can ask what you want, but allow me to answer them. So like, but that part was confusing to me, and he brings up about like he used to be like a weapons, not weapons dealer, but he made weapons for the military and things that you know uh, uh, have like unforeseen collateral damage on the innocent. Even though Tony rebuts that, yeah, because I like the way the dialogue here. Uh, 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 like my point, John. My point, John, is that Stark microelectronic breakthroughs have all led up to useful social technologies through the initial military funding. No, I didn't first think to myself that taking microchips down to the nanometer limit would be good for bombs. And the money from the seed pod was driven into the biometric implants, cardiac replacements, medicine, internal and analgesic pumps. Am I an arms dealer? No. Did I start out as a weapons designer? Yes. Do I intend to die as one? No. Uh, so it's like, yeah, like he's up front. He's not hiding who he was. And that's what we respect about like Tony Stark, is unlike most real world or rich guys, most, not all, say like, yeah, like I had done shitty things before. I had, because of my, traumatic experience being held hostage by terrorists who was using my set of weapons, who was, like in the first movie, was intended to protect people, not cause bigger harm to the innocent. And he got out of the game immediately as soon as he got back. He changed up his game, and this is like 5 years into his, like 5 to 8 years into his career as Iron Man. I think it's 8 years in this, into his career as Iron Man. So through all that time, he like established himself as a member of the Avengers, and this is not too long before the events of Civil War will eventually happen. But uh, like we make breakthroughs. Like using my intelligence and my skills as an engineer uh, to make you know uh, uh, things, my inventions to help for the greater good of people. And he just lays out that I like that part of it, but it's kind of like a thing that kind of interview that would have happened like not too long after he got back from his old terrorist thing. And also, in this point in time, Iron Man is still considered as Tony Stark's bodyguard. Now, he eventually gets a call from uh, Maya Hansen, who at this point walked upon on, because Al Killian, who only had his minor part in this arc, sold uh, a bit of Extremis to uh, uh, Malin and his fanatics, and he obviously regretting everything he did. So he wrote a confession uh, thing on his computer for Maya to read, and he ended up taking a gun out of his desk. Why would the scientist just has a random gun in their desk? And then kills himself, right there at his desk. And Maya's walked in on that. So she calls Tony uh, for, you know, to come, she needs to talk with him. Like, she needs his, like, expertise. Because somehow the extremists got out. And, like, Tony just started reminiscing about, his time with Maya and meeting at this conference thing that he'd rather not be there. And he was, like, very young at the time. Uh, da, 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 da. On his way there, he's having, like I mentioned before, having this conversation with his board of directors, because they're suggesting that Tony should have somebody as chairman to handle the day-to-day operations of uh, 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 I can't remember, it was like Stark Industries, because he changes his company's name a lot throughout his history, because it's not Stark Industries anymore, but it comes like Stark Solutions, Stark Enterprises. It was just called Stark Enterprises. Uh, and uh, they don't want him to like step away from his responsibilities. He's still like, the CEO. He like, his word is, is law as far as they're concerned. But and they want him to continue to making like technologies and inventions and stuff like that. But he spends so much time in the garage, uh, 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 and he is split between the two. And it's not, which they have a point in a way, because I recall about like Bruce Wayne. He's still CEO of Wayne Enterprises, but as far as day-to-day stuff, he lets Lucius Fox handle that stuff. Now here, during the Extremis art, we don't see like Rhodey or Pepper, which would kind of like help in this matter because typically Pepper Potts can handle the day-to-day stuff while he's busy inventing new suits or whatever, or out being like Iron Man helping the Avengers, which he most likely would rather do, or just party, or just like have a good time, whatever. Uh, but mostly like inventing. This is kind of like makes him feel better. It's like it's comforting to him. While he was doing that interview with that uh, with Pillinger guy, while he's listening to the guy, but you see him like drawing up new ideas for a certain of a new suit. He's always having like new ideas for Iron Man suits on the brain. But Stark's not having that because he doesn't want anybody as acting chairman, because as you mentioned, the first thing they're gonna want to do is start up military like applications for certain things, and it's like no, no, I'm not having it. So he goes to see Maya, and she's obviously devastated, losing a partner, and also on top of that, Extreme is getting out somehow because Madeline's pretty much starting to wreak havoc at this point. Hitting uh, certain. It might seem like a military installation. It wasn't like very clear. Obviously, someone because it got like soldiers inside. It had to be something. But uh, Stark and Maya go see an old professor of theirs, uh, Sal, who uh, you, also a scientist in his own right, but I guess at a certain point, like he kind of got out of the game and started, on this kind of like kind of looks like Jeff Bridges in like the Big Lebowski. He's got all hippy dippity and stuff, like growing using this scientific know-how to grow uh, pharmaceutical, natural hallucinogenics and stuff like that, help him with his like creative thinking, and then they go there for advice, or at least my goes there for advice, and before they get to that point, he's like, I don't know what it is. It's like guilt tripping them, or make them seem like crap. Maybe he doesn't intend to do that purposely, but he's trying to point it out to them, and like you know you know they at least in his mind they claim him to be out the game, but it's like you can't work in this field of science while without having to get into their pool of governments and military applications, because you know you as Maya said, like if I had like Tony's like resources and what have you, if I was in the same position as Tony is now, I can probably be able to cure cancer at this point. And he and Sal points out, it's like, well, you can't again, you can't do what you want with the science that you know how without having to get funding from guys who want to use your smarts to build better weapons that will ultimately not help anybody. So it's pretty much like a whole guilt trip with this whole discussion, which I kind of feel like is like a waste of time. Like it's not like they do not know this, and because that's kind of irritating when people tell you what you already know, and it's like some of these people act like, especially when it comes to Tony, act like he has not trying to do better, and it's like, why are you kicking on a man who's already down? It's like I know this, like I know where I used to be. And it's been years, and I've been doing what I can to like. It's not like he hasn't been beating himself up, like every once in a while. It's not like that feeling has not gone away, but he's taken steps to uh, you know, make the world better. And he's been like harping on that with everybody, but like nobody seems to want to believe him for some reason. Uh, 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 the extremists, he goes on about like the extremists who's supposed to be like, you know, trying to recreate the super soldier serum, you know, because like Dr. Erskine was the only person who knew how the super soldier serum worked, and only worked on one guy, Steve Rogers, before Erskine died from assassination. So like the whole concept died with him. He was the only one that perfected it. Uh, but you know, people since then has been trying to recreate it in some form or fashion, either with extremists or in a case like uh, uh, Thunderbolt Ross and Bruce Banner, who try to use gamma radiation as a different source. Neither one worked in that capacity, at least not in the way they wanted it to do. Uh, uh, you know, Sal points out like, oh, you into Tony, like you can barely look at yourself in the mirror, can you? And that's what it's like. Okay, like this whole interaction was like pretty much like a waste of time. Uh, in my opinion, it's like a whole entire guilt trip. It doesn't seem like he offered like a real any real advice. Uh, and then eventually they found on the news about the domestic terrorist attack Malin just committed on like a government facility. On the plane ride back to try to deal with uh, all that, uh, Maya explains to Tony how like the streaming serum works. Pretty much like it does make you stronger and faster, but it also kind of like rewrites your DNA. They're trying to use it like, oh, you can pretty much like hack your DNA, which is they put into the Iron Man 3 film. But the problem is, you know, it's not 100% perfect, because unless the body accepts the change, you will just explode or just plain old die. Uh, but in a certain dosage, you end up becoming what Malin, or even in the characters from Iron Man 3 or in Armored Adventures episode, you become like a fire breathing, like just nut job. I won't say nut job, but it's like you pretty much like not all there, at least. Because you turn into like some kind of cocoon while you're incubating a bit, and then you emerge, you know, powerful, but it's like because haven't gotten like the dosage right, which in this Tony came up with a solution because he eventually injected himself with the extremists, just like in the episode. Uh, he did a smaller dosage, which uh, does kind of increase his speed quite a bit, especially inside the armor, but it gives him like technopathic kind of abilities, at least to a limited scale. Uh, it's not like a mutant level, Omega mutant level technopath kind of situation, but just lower level to where he can like hack into certain machines or mentally control and operate his armor to automatically get to him. Uh, so he sends Maya back to her lab while Tony confronts uh, Malin, who you get a brief glimpse of his little upbringing because he born like in like a redneck family who obviously uh, was into like selling like drugs or whatever, that kind of thing. So that kind of environment, of course, this kid had no chance, at like a decent. Not every kid who raised in that environment turns out bad, but like the odds usually not in that kind of favor. So Tony like starts attacking. Uh, I guess we don't know what happened to because his buddies, Malin's buddies, was in a driver and passenger seat. Don't know what happened to them because Tony kind of you know shoot a repulsor beam, cut that van in half, and like who knows what happened to them? We never seen them again. Doesn't really matter. You can say they died off screen. And proceeds to try to take down or subdue Malin, but he's breathing fire. He's outpacing Tony, and his strength is like is crazy. He's not like Thor uh, or like Hulk, but fairly, I say fairly close to like like Luke Cage level of strength. Maybe you can count that. If you want to put like a you know uh 1-on-1 to it. So Tony is like not you know uh is is not uh he's losing pretty much, and he's getting his ass handed to him. And luckily he called, like before he took off, he put in like a Avengers priority alert to the FBI saying like I'm 2 minutes behind, like after you get this message, come 2 minutes after you get this message and follow my trail to the destination. So I'm intercepting the threat, and here they come, right on cue. And because like the support is coming, Malin decided to just take off, leaving like Tony just like beat the hell up. It's kind of like the whole. It's kind of like if you see like Batman tangling with Bane the first time, because like it's on that kind of scale, whereas like Iron Man's like royally getting his ass beat, despite him having like sophisticated armor, but this guy can heal from any kind of damage. Not any kind of damage, but you actually gotta shoot to kill kind of situation with this guy because he's not going to stop. So uh, Iron Man's getting airlifted, and he puts a request to uh, meet up with Maya Hansen, who has luckily a medical facility inside. So uh, they wheeled him in, and she's the only person that's gonna look after him while everybody else goes away. She figures out like he's Tony Stark, and he comes up with the idea like, okay, injecting the lower doses of the Extremis serum, because with the tech I have, because I got a better suit, but because he mentions earlier in the arc about having like missing a portable suit that he can just carry in like a suitcase, which he eventually evolved from that because you can just call suits to him, and and what have you, or he always has some kind of suit nearby that can get to him quickly, rather than lugging a big suitcase around all the time. But she thinks it's crazy. Like, you know, you don't know what happened to you. Your body rejects it, you're gonna die. But that's like, this guy is on a tear. He, you know, Tony figures out that he's on a pathway because he's chucking it like the road runner. You know, after he ran away from him, he chucking it down the dirt road like the road runner, and he's cutting a straight, he beelines, you know, straight into the direction of Washington D.C., planning on wreaking havoc at the White House more than likely. And uh, Tony's like, okay, inject me. Got no choice. I need to stop this guy. And smartly, Maya brings up, like, why don't you just call the Avengers? And it's like, just like in the freaking Iron Man 3, it's like when you dealing with like a big threat that, like, you know, other superpower heroes, they're your freaking friends. So why don't you freaking call them? And it's like, yeah, I know it's comics. It's like, you know, if it's like a Spider-Man story, just like that I covered months ago, the Spider-Man's first interaction with Mon Lun, the energy-sucking vampire that's going after a different Spider-Man from different universes. His first interaction, which once again is kind of like his version of Bane beating the ever-loving shit out of this guy. And it's like, you know, they put in at the very least, like, you know, I probably should call the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, somebody, but it's like you only got enough change for the payphone to call up anybody, so he's calling up his aunt because he feels he might die in this, and he wanted to make his only call he can make to her. But it's like, it's so dumb. Yeah, sure. Like, usually Avengers and like Fantastic Four are usually off-world or in a different dimension or whatever. But it's like, you know, a plethora of heroes. They all cannot be off-world. And that's what, like, the Avengers have like a ID card where they can press a button as a priority alert, so everybody comes convening. Anybody who's still on Earth who can make it pretty close, all can come as backup. It makes freaking sense, y'all. In the comics, currently right going on right now is like Avengers versus Inhumans kind of thing versus X-Men kind of thing. Y'all all clearly know each other, and it's like, same with like Daredevil. I get it. Y'all got like a Pacific bad guy that you feel like, I got to handle this on my own. I can't, like, you know, even if I call them, they won't get here in time, and things are happening right now, blah, 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 blah. Sure. But it's just like, if you're dealing with a threat that's royally whooping your ass and might cause a bigger devastation, and I know the fucking Fantastic Four, you know, they all freaking know each other. They've been through several events in the past couple of years at this point. Y'all all should have some kind of ID or a card or a signal watch or something to call. And it's like, okay, there's a energy sucking vampire from a different universe coming after me relentlessly, no matter if I'm in or outside my costume, and Carol's gonna tear through the city just to find me, and he's outclassing me in fucking strength. I need the Thing. I need the Hulk. I need Luke Cage. I need Thor. Somebody who can easily outstrength him, because my strength ain't compared to him at this point. And it's like, you know, just like get somebody there. And maybe not as soon as possible, but at least I can at least stall them for a couple of minutes until they get here. Something. And it makes no sense for Iron Man to go. Like, personally, I don't think it makes sense for Iron Man, who knows fucking Avengers, the close friends with them. Maybe not Captain America, even though I think Captain America can probably deal with this in some capacity. But calling freaking Thor, send a, you know, thunderbolt or like a hammer strike this guy in the. Of course, there wouldn't be no story if like you just send a hammer down and knock this dude clean the hell out, and that's the end of the story. I get it, but it's just like you're dealing with a serious threat that, just like with Batman with Bane, it's like, this guy is gonna kill me. I did Batman Noel review last December for the holiday comic book review, and I pointed out, like, because Superman shows up as like a Ghost of Christmas Present kind of situation, and he mentions how, like, you hearing Bruce's cough. I'm way in Metropolis, and I heard your cough from there. Okay, yeah, Superman has super freaking hearing. Not everybody has that kind of skill, but he's there in seconds. So it makes sense that, you can, I won't say keeping tabs, but it's like you his best friend. So obviously, there's something going on. You hearing that your friend, his heartbeat is like struggling or whatever, and you're still on Earth. You can get there in seconds, knock the hell out of Bane before he seriously maims your friend. So that's all I'm saying. It's like, come on. It's like it usually doesn't make any sense at this point in time in comics that, just because it's a solo stuff, it doesn't mean like Daredevil or Spider-Man or Iron Man cannot call a backup when they're getting their asses handed to them. Or when he fighting Bullseye, call somebody who's impervious or invulnerable or can heal fast, at least, like Wolverine or Luke Cage, to come in and like, or Ghost Rider or somebody to come in who can easily deal with Bullseye, or Deadpool at the very least, who can deal with Bullseye and is not worried about getting injured by whoever. Yeah, no matter, it doesn't matter to them how skillful he is with throwing stuff lethally, because you can either heal from it or it'll bounce right off of you. Doesn't matter. So he won't be able to do anything to them. I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm just, saying it's kind of ridiculous at this point in time for uh uh superheroes to be like working solo when they all know each other, at least like in general aspects. In the meantime, while like he's getting that dose, Malin, as he's running beelines his way to Washington, he stops in the middle of the road while this seemingly look like she says like she's like come across she's verbalizing like she's like a freaking teenager, like she's 18 or 19 or 20, and it's like you're drawing in a way that makes you look like you're at least 28, reaching 30. But she's one of those kind of like, he's starting to talk with her, and she saying, I'm just passing through this town, you know, I'm getting out of this town, and it's like they treat me different because like I like to dress all in black and I speak more vocabulary than they do. They treat me like I'm different, and like I got different things, opinions and what have you. But and then like he's trying to relate to her, like, yeah, like, you know, people, didn't care for me and my way of thinking too. But it's like, I'm, gonna do some stuff to bring everything back, and because he goes on about like how uh like you say uh cops and feds can outright kill us even if we think about defending ourselves, and they call it terrorism. Uh, and he mentioned like, the Klan did good things too. They defended Christian law in a lot of places, and it's like uh, it's like no, the Klan uh lynched people who didn't look like regular white folks, and it's like, like, no, you're a racist piece of shit. And it's like, I'm not like, you know in the way I do things differently is not like to like the social norm, but I'm not a fucking racist, and like, I don't want to like, hurt people. Like I want to live the life I want to live. I want to dress in all in black. I want to be goth. I want to have intelligent conversations and speak my mind without being attacked for it. Uh, I want to be able to disagree without it being like a whole thing. Uh, and after she confronts this racist prick, he just, it was sad. It's probably the saddest moment out of the entire run. It's like he ends up killing her. I think he took her whole doggone head off, which is This is a shame. Uh, so while Tony is in this cocoon state, he's having like dreams about his time in the cave with Jensen, and got Jensen in this kind of looking like one of those I forgot like this. He's like a character Asian character actor. And I'm blanking on his name. He's been in like quite a few stuff over the years, and I can't even figure out which. It might be in Balls of Fury. Maybe it's that guy. Let me check and see because like I'm blanking on his name, but that's what he looked like to me. No, not James Hong, not him. God, it was another, you know, uh, actor, and I'm blanking on his doggone name, or at least the movies he's been in. But if you read like Extremis and you see that character, you might get a feeling like you know him from somewhere, and that's what he looked like. Uh, if you know, please leave a comment below because like I'm blanking on it. Uh, Not that like all Asian actors look the same, but like because like you see his face, you know a particular actor, and that's what he reminds me of. And it's like I'm trying to remember like a movie I've seen him in. That's what he looked like to me. Because like I've seen him in plenty of stuff, just like James Hong. I've seen James Hong in plenty of stuff, like Balls of Fury. Uh, but God, it still is bugging me. I'm pretty sure when I see another movie and I spy him, that's where like, oh, there he is. But uh, reminiscing about the time, uh, pretty much his mental state is trying to like, you know, do his trying to like his mind is cooperating with his body, it's like reconciling with his body. It's like while physically he's like merging with the extremists. His mind is like this the invincible Iron Man coming into play. He's like the strength of will, the iron will to like fight his build an Iron Man suit. Even though he has like a week to live, he reconstructed a proper arc reactor pacemaker with Jensen, build a suit of armor and fight his way out, despite losing Jensen in the process because of a stray bullet. Uh, and Jensen's play, you know, as like Asian one spot or Arab in another spot. It's usually one of the two. And uh, as in mentally, he's fighting his way out yet again of the cave. It also gives him the strength to crawl out of the cocoon, perfectly merge well with the extremists. To the point now he's like a freaking technopath. He's mentally, he made some alterations to like the serum without Maya realizing it. So that way he can have this kind of like mesh suit comes from inside his body from like the bones and like you know uh, sync well with his new suit of armor that can fit in the suitcase. Uh, and I like this moment because this kind of made me laugh when he's mentally calling her through the phone, and he's saying like, I can drink some water while I'm still talking to you on the phone, and she just throws the phone like kind of freak because he freaking her out. That part made me laugh. Uh, but uh, now he's like, he's got the the lower dose of insurance with giving him just enough to handle himself, while at the same time having like a brand new suit of armor that's not as clunky as like the previous one was. But this whole extremist thing, like I don't think it'll last long because like the whole mesh suit. I think not unlike in Iron Man 2, where like the arc reactor, his old model, was slowly poisoning him. Uh, this Extremis mess suit, does something to his body, which caused him to get that stuff out of him, and like years later. I remember distinctly that being a thing. I just can't remember what comic art it was. So now he's taking the fight back to Malin. He intercepted him, and like now he's like outclocking him. And Tony mentions how like mentions to this guy like how you frustrate me, and it's so cathartic just to see like your heroes beating the hell out of a racist prick. It's so cathartic. It's like it's something that guys like this need their ass beat. I'm sorry, but like that kind of way of thinking, the way you care about with life, is not tolerated whatsoever. Because Tony mentions like you represent something like I hate it, like somebody who is not just gives like and think of the future, and like you trying to bring all that's wrong in the past to the future, and I can't have that. And so they had this drag out fight in the street. Obviously, it's abandoned, and Tony is telling this guy like, lay face down, put your hands behind your head, cross your legs, and like you're under arrest. And this guy just would not give up. Like this is what happens when we get like racist pricks, superpowers. They already think they like above everything. So Tony had no choice, but because just like you if you've seen recently Iron Man 3, one of the henchmen of Killian, he get Tony unibeams through his chest, just like this, and then he grab his head and repulsor blast his head off. And there was like one brief moment where his body, the Extremis, is making his body still move, like he's raising himself up, even though he's headless, and then he just collapses and dies. It freaks Tony out a bit. They freak me out a bit too, because I haven't read this in such a long time. But he finally starts Malin's rampage. But then he comes back with the military to arrest Maya Hansen, because upon further investigation, he realized that the Extremis, which was locked up and Killian used to give to Malin, it can only be let out through two like passcode things, and only two people had access to that. It was Killian, and Maya had the other one. So she's pretty much busted, and her rationale was like, about like the what kind of bomb? It was like the atomic bomb, and it's like, the only reason they I don't want to misquote her. You know what they said about the atomic bomb? They said it had to be used once in anger in order that it never be used in anger again. So so pretty much like, let me read this more. I would have used the renewed funding to get out of the arms race, set up on my own medical technology. More than 50 people die in car accidents every day. The only mistake I made was giving a damn about who was inside the Iron Man suit. There's no difference between us, Tony. You're no better than me. And Tony proceeds like, yeah, but I'm trying to do better. So I will be able to look at myself in the mirror. But that's how she rationalizes it. Hey, I don't know why she, verbalized in front of people his name is Tony, And it's like, I mean, eventually he'll come out and admit that he's, Iron Man later on. But I thought that was a stupid mistake to include in a dialogue, whatever, while she's being arrested. But if it was Shield agents, it would probably be a different story. But anyway, the way she rationalizes is kind of insane. That's why it's kind of like a flip effect in a way from Iron Man 3, where Maya had second thoughts about what she was doing, while Killian was the overall bad guy. And they kind of flipped it here in the comic. Or I should say they flipped it in the movie. But she rationalizing it like, because she wants to get the funding she needs, and she got the Extremis thing, and like, well, it's like that whole tired trouble with villains saying like, oh, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, blah blah blah, and it's like that's how she's thinking, like, oh well, people have to die, but the military can see this in action, and they're gonna want it, and they'll give me whatever dollar I ask, so I can fund what I truly want to do is enter this medical field and hire as many people as I want to do better in the future. So I have to do a little worse now, and that's how she kind of wrestling. Like, I'm no different than you, Tony. You made weapons, and then you decide to do better. But it's like that's not the same. It's not the same. Like uh, you can argue it's not the same. It's like like my family started out in weapons stealing. I was raised in it, and I didn't have a clue like how it was being used outside my purview until I witnessed it for myself and made the change. Uh, you you had the mindset of what was going to be used for. It's not that like Tony had an excuse, but it's like you can understand his rationale, while you cannot rationale what she's saying. But yeah, I mean, that's the end of the Extremis arc. It's just like a 6-issue run, and yeah, it's a dope story. Like the art is all right, and it's like pretty short and sweet. Uh, uh, Diamond suits, like it's not that too dissimilar to the classic red and gold thing, just like with different, same colors but different sleek designs to it. Uh, I'm glad it's like the bad guy is not like a big world destroying thing. He's just like a crazy domestic terrorist that deservingly got his ass beat. Uh, I mean, it's not one of my favorite kind of Iron Man stories. I still like Armor Wars that I recently covered. I think I like that a little bit better. As far as like an Iron Man story. But let me know what you guys think if you read Iron Man Extremis. And leave a comment below. And I will see you guys in a little bit as I cover Marvel anime Iron Man Season 1. Because I've been sitting on those Marvel anime stories that are cartoons that came out in the mid 2000s, or like around 2010s, and they did one for Iron Man, Blade, Wolverine, and the X-Men. And eventually I will cover them because I have to buy the dang things because they're not. That's the issue I'm having with like Disney Plus, even though it's supposed to be like the better one out of all the streaming apps. Why don't you have all Marvel related content on that thing? All Marvel and Disney related content on your thing, like the Buzz Lightyear TV show, House of Mouse, Marvel's anime series like Iron Man, Blade, Wolverine, X-Men. Because you got everything else. It doesn't make sense. Like Kevin Feige or whoever's running Disney Plus should be grabbing it all up and dumping them there for everybody to enjoy. There should be no reason why we should be looking for outside sources when we don't have to. But anyway, I will see you guys in like a few minutes while I get that, Iron Man anime